Hi everyone! So this week's video is going to be a little different than our usual. This time of year is really busy for me. I'm a manager of a small urban farm and greenhouse, and this is our busiest time of year, what with getting all the plants in the ground and getting the field ready and hiring and all of that. So normally around mid-spring is when Jordan is really doing the bulk of the work for our videos. But unfortunately, Jordan had to have brain surgery last week. Don't worry, everything is okay. He was having seizures and we took him to get them checked out, and it turns out he has something called an AVM in his brain, and the doctors thought it would be a good move to go ahead and get it surgically removed. And I'll go ahead and let Jordan tell you how he's feeling.
Hey everybody. So if you took a look at me and said, that guy looks like somebody chopped his head open, stapled it back together, and then he didn't sleep, shower, or poop for 7 days, you're exactly right.
To be clear, he did shower. At least once.
I tried. Anyway, I just wanted to give a sign of life. I had a successful brain surgery. The recovery is very long though, so I'm taking my time. I'm being very well taken care of by Sylvan and my parents and my sisters and my nephews and all of our friends and my nurse/guard dog, little Moo. I can't see myself on the screen right now, but I'm sure it's evident that it's very difficult for me to do much of anything right now. So I'm not going to be editing a ton of new videos over the next week, but I do have the gears turning, and I'm thinking of lots of fun ideas while I'm laying here in bed with nothing to do. Girl, thank you, Nurse Moo. Thank you. Oh, that's the best medicine in the world. Kisses from Nurse Moo.
So I'm gonna work on making sure Jordan feels better real soon, and in the meantime, we thought we'd share one of the video guides from our online foraging course. This is all about how we forage, sustainably harvest, preserve, and cook with one of our favorite spring things, ramps. Hope you enjoy it.
Ramps, or wild leeks, are one of the most coveted wild foods in the North American forest. They have a delicious, mild, oniony, garlicky flavor, and where you find one of them, you usually find about a million others. One of our annual springtime traditions is to trek out to a remote trout stream where we like to find a lot of ramps and catch a fish or two. There is some concern that due to the growing popularity of ramps, they might become over-harvested by commercial foragers, but where we live, we haven't found that to be the case. You'll have to use your best judgment about the area where you're foraging and how heavily impacted it is by commercial foragers. But remember that sustainable foraging isn't just about the absence of over-harvesting, but also the presence of reciprocating. More on that later.
Ramps are one of the easier wild foods to identify. They typically have 2, sometimes 3 of these sort of long oval-shaped leaves that are about 1 to 2 inches wide. The leaves are typically a bright spring green color with some very light striping on them, but the stem can vary from either a light green to a kind of reddish purple color. The bulb of a ramp plant is bright white, but it can often be found with a light brown sheath, which is either papery or slimy depending on the soil moisture. Ramps propagate themselves either by dropping seeds right at the base of the existing plant or by splitting at the bulb and cloning themselves. And due to this method of propagation, they can often be found growing in dense clumps. If you think you found a patch of ramps and all of the characteristics that we just discussed are true, there's a great way to positively identify it, and that's to use your nose. So ramps are a member of the allium family, which also contains domesticated onions, garlic, and leeks, and all of those plants produce compounds that create that really great onion garlic flavor and scent. So if you find a patch, what you should do is just take a little bit of the leaf, crush it up and hold it up to your nose, and if it makes that nice sort of sweet onion garlic aroma, chances are you've got ramps.
Ramps are found all over the eastern US and Canada in deciduous forests. They particularly like growing around sugar maples, so if you know of a good stand of mature sugar maples, that's a great place to start your search. We typically find them growing around floodplains of mountain streams. They really like damp soil, so avoid looking for them in the drier parts of the forest. Sometimes a north-facing slope of the forest, which receives less sunlight than a south-facing slope, is the best place to look for them.
Ramps are spring ephemerals, which means they pop out during that brief window of time when the sun is high enough in the sky for them to photosynthesize, but before all the overstory trees in the forest leaf out and cover them in dense shade. This period of time when ramps are available is usually no more than about a month to 6 weeks. We typically start looking for ramps about 1 month before our average last frost date. If you're not sure of the average last frost date in your area, it's easy to find by simply searching average last frost and your city and state.
Ramps have been foraged by people for personal consumption for generations without issue, especially in Appalachia where we live. There's even an annual ramp festival not far from us in West Virginia. In recent years, ramps have gained popularity among gourmet chefs, which has increased commercial demand for their roots and leaves. I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but commercial harvesting often leads to the type of foraging where people strip the land of resources without regard for the future health of the population of that plant. We haven't personally seen evidence of this kind of commercial harvesting in the areas where we forage ramps, but because of that looming threat, we're always careful to not take too much and also reciprocate the harvest by transplanting some ramps and spreading their seeds in other suitable areas of the forest where ramps aren't present. Ramps are slow-growing perennials, and like we mentioned earlier, they reproduce by either splitting and producing clones or flowering and producing seeds. We try to leave at least 2/3 of each clump that we're harvesting from, and we don't harvest at all if they're not prevalent in the area where we're foraging. After the trees leaf out and the ramp leaves slip back underground, the plants will produce their flower stalks and produce seeds. We recommend going back to your ramp patch about a month after you forage to collect some of the seeds and spread them around in suitable areas to thank the ramps for the harvest and the delicious meals that they provided you. Ramp seeds can take years to germinate, so don't hold your breath, but we've successfully repopulated areas even in our own backyard where we now have big clumps of wild ramps growing.
Because ramps are only available for this brief window in the spring, we like to preserve their flavor in a number of different ways to eat throughout the rest of the year. If you're harvesting the bulbs, you can pickle these just like you would pearl onions, and they'll last for months in the fridge. We like to take the leaves and dehydrate them and powder them. Then we can use that powder to mix with salt for a seasoning salt or just on its own in things like soups. The leaves are also really great in things like pesto and other herby sauces, but probably my favorite way to preserve their flavor is to chop up the leaves and mix into a compound butter that we save in the freezer for special occasions. Ramps are great in just about everything, but my favorite way to preserve their flavor for the rest of the year when they're not available is to make ramp butter. It's really simple and a great thing to have in your freezer and just pull out when you want something a little special to go with whatever you're eating. For this recipe, we're going to do about a ½ pound of butter, and so I'm going to take about a handful of ramps, it's probably like, I don't know, 20 to 30 leaves, and blanch them first in some boiling water. This just softens them up a little bit so they're easier to blend into the butter and also kind of helps preserve their flavor better in the freezer. It doesn't take long, just about 30 seconds for them to be nicely cooked through, and now I'm just going to put them in this colander to drain. Now I'm going to just add it to a food processor with the butter to blend it all up. I'm going to first squeeze as much water out of there as possible. And I'm just going to very roughly chop it to get it going and throw it in the bowl of a food processor. And here I'm going to add just a little splash of lemon juice. I think that kind of helps keep the flavor bright, just like a tablespoon. And then add in the butter. Your butter should be soft. Ours was actually in the freezer, so I had to kind of melt it in the oven, which is why it looks like that, but just softened at room temperature will be fine. Depending on how soft your butter is, you may need to pause and scrape down the sides every once in a while as you're blending. And this is a good opportunity to give it just a little taste test. And see if it needs any salt, pepper, more lemon juice, whatever you want to make it delicious. Once you've blended it to your liking, I tend to keep it a little chunky and not super homogeneous. You can store it for about, I don't know, maybe a month in the fridge and then several months in the freezer. Just put it in a nice airtight container, something like this little plastic tub, or you could wrap it up in a log of like saran wrap or parchment paper. But I'm gonna save a little out to eat now.
So we actually just rewatched the ramp video, and that was very informative and well put together. Now I wonder, is there somewhere that people could instantly access over 40 additional videos just like that?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Jordan, because there is, and it's our online foraging course where there's, I think 43 plus different modules all about how to forage sustainably and cook with all kinds of wild foods. We also have an online course called How to Grow Your Own Food, which is all about how we tend our gardens.
Unbelievable.
I know.
I wonder, is there a heavily discounted spring sale happening right now for the bundle of both courses?
You are so smart. Are you sure they chipped into your brain?
Yeah, they took out all the dumb parts.
Yes, we have a big spring sale going on right now, so check it out. And as always, if you are on SNAP, WIC, or other financial assistance programs, we do have sliding scale price options, so just shoot us an email at the address below. Bye!